is James Arnold Taylor, voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Welcome to a more civilized podcast. This is the podcast you're looking for. You may not go about your business. Stay here, listen, and then move along.
Hey there, AMCP listeners. Oh, see, I'm mixing it up.
Whoa.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I don't know what too fast there, man.
Yeah.
I don't think we're big enough for an acronym yet, sir.
That's how I've been doing it on Twitter, though, because it saves many, many, many characters because our name is about a mile long. As always, I'm Kyler.
I'm Chris.
I'm Ross.
Oh, and I'm Ryan.
Yeah, you are.
That's a little less, as always, but yeah. Well,
Yeah. So, everybody, this is our buddy Ryan. Ryan, like Ross and I, is a fan of Bacon Sale.
I'm a fan of Bacon Sale.
And Chris is Chris is a recent fan of Bacon Sale.
Yes.
We've finally brought him into the cult.
Yeah, Bacon Sale, guys. It was your 2019's predictions episode that won me over. I was like,
They do a prediction episode every year, and they're always really funny.
Yeah, I gathered that from context.
Yeah.
But, no, I listened to one or two and been like, yeah, these guys are all right. We'll see. But I listened to that one and went, okay, nope, yeah. So there's a Bacon Sale plug for any listeners. But
So, and actually, that's a good segue because that is how Ryan comes to be on this show. You want to tell how you got on Bacon Sale and then here?
Sure. Well, I've been a Bacon Sale fan since nearly the beginning. Well, I would say from the beginning. I knew of them as soon as they started.
Mm-hmm.
I actually kind of went to high school with Joel. He's a couple.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh. Wow.
So I knew Joel from high school, and then I ran into him.
Are the stories we've heard true?
I wasn't that close with him.
Okay.
So we were in a play together.
Nice.
A melodrama.
Which one?
It's called Adrift to New York. I was the cop, and Joel was the poor farmer who was going to lose his farm to the evil villain. So your classic melodrama tropes.
I really want to know, is he as big a ladies' man as he pretends he was in high school?
I would say probably yes.
Oh, wow.
But a year after I left, they did a Shakespearean play, Taming the Shrew.
Ooh.
good times.
And
Very good
he
one.
accepted a smaller part so that he could kiss the pretty girl.
Attaboy, Joel.
It's a true story.
That's fantastic. Brian, you should be on the show more. Mostly because I just want to hear more funny Joel stories. That would be awesome.
So I ran into Joel again when we were in the same ward for a while. And then I started listening. I got behind at the beginning. And then listened to him ever since. And then
so did I. I remember
forked out the $25 a month so that I could be on the show. And that's how I ended up on their show. And then by following them on Twitter, I noticed that a more civilized podcast said something to them on Twitter, and Bacon Cell interacted and responded. And so that's when I saw the tweet. And so then I said, hey, a Star Wars podcast. I like Star Wars. I'll give it a listen. So I've listened to a few. I'm sorry to say I haven't listened to all of your shows yet.
That's okay. Neither have we. Heck, even during recording, sometimes I'm like, wait, what now?
Yep. Ross is the only one who has, and now that we have a new sound engineer,
none of us will listen
as much. Yeah, that'll.
It's true.
Yep.
Oh, shoot. Well, one thing that Bacon Sale does that I love, and now we have a good opportunity to do it, is ask you some questions.
Oh,
you ready?
Oh, we're doing this. Wow.
Oh, we're doing it. Mostly because I want to hopefully rub some stuff in Ross's face. And Chris's. So which of the Star Wars movies is your favorite?
It's kind of hard for me. It's original trilogy for sure, but I kind of go back and forth. I like the original trilogy really well, but I'll go with Empire Strikes Back. If I had to pick one, it'd be Empire Strikes Back.
Good choice. Very good choice. All right.
Now, hold on, though. Regardless of what he said, would any of them have been a bad choice?
With the original trilogy? Nah.
Not with the original trilogy.
Because that's my thinking is, had he said Jedi, I probably would have been still respectable and A New Hope. Yeah, no.
Well, Jedi, I would have been more enthusiastic because that's my favorite. Return of the Jedi. Followed very closely.
I'm not trying to downplay anything at all, but I'm just saying, I mean, they're all good choices.
I would say when I was younger, Return of the Jedi was my favorite. That was the one that I actually saw in the theater.
Lucky guy.
So, the first movie I remember seeing was Return of the Jedi. The first movie I remember seeing in the theater was Return of the Jedi. I actually even remember the comment that the lady behind me, when Luke gets his hand cut off, or no, not Luke, Vader gets his hand cut off, and then Luke flexes his fingers and she's like, "Oh, did he get his hand?" And I was like, "Why is she?
Why are you even here? What are you doing?"
And I was only like 5 years old, so
Wow.
I already had a correct view of the world.
That's
there.
right.
Yeah, no kidding.
Don't watch things out of order, lady.
This is very important, and there is a correct answer. Which is worse, episode 1 or episode 2?
Episode 2. So this is also an episode they have on Bacon Cell, and I heard you ask this question of somebody else, and so I had to go back to that Bacon Cell episode and say, what did I answer on that one? Episode 2, and the reason, I'll give you a reason why I like episode 2 less. It all comes down to the one scene where they're in the chase scene, they're going after Sam Wessel, is that how they say it?
Zam
Wessel. And Anakin flies through the power couplings, and they're shaking, and it's like it looks like a bad 1960s Star Trek episode.
Yeah,
where they're shaking, and Ewan McGregor gives the worst line of his career, and he's like, "Anakin, how many times have I told you don't fly through power couplings?" And it's just
bad.
Just for that one line alone, it's gotta be.
That's fair.
We didn't even mention that, but that's what we should have.
I do remember when I was doing the rewatch with my son. I remember that hitting that point and just being, just gritting my teeth, just that's bad.
Yeah.
All right, was Rogue One good?
I liked Rogue One.
No, he did not say it was good.
All right, pedantic.
I was very surprised by Rogue One. I thought it was a fine movie. So
there we go.
I don't have a lot of complaints about Rogue One.
And then the last one was The Last Jedi good?
No, absolutely not.
Thank you.
So there was one for each of us there.
Thank you. Okay, I can put those away.
So if I had to rank worst Star Wars movies, so we already said worst. Okay, so this is another thing that people always talk about, right? I would say Episode 2, Episode 1, Last Jedi.
That high, huh?
Ooh,
Yeah.
Not for me.
So that's the bottom 3.
Ooh.
And then Revenge of the Sith, Force Awakens, and then the original trilogy. And then the other two, I don't really know where you put those. But
Yeah.
they're on the list.
I put Rogue One down at the bottom.
That's all right, Chris. You can be wrong.
I could, in theory. That is something that could happen someday.
Oh, boy. Alrighty. Ross, you want to take the news away?
Yes, so we have a couple fun pieces of newsy news. First is there is several items of tie-ins to the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge theme park. So it looks like they're having John Williams do music for it, which, by the way, happy birthday, Mr. Williams. As of recording this today. Today is John Williams' 87th birthday?
No, 86, I think.
86th? Whatever it was. And they are also tying in with a book being written by author Delilah S. Dawson, who was the same author that wrote Phasma. So do they have a title for that yet? I wasn't...
No, not as far as I know.
So it's probably
just announced that it's happening.
Yeah, 87. I was wrong. 87 years old.
That's right. Kyler. Anyway, so...
You act like me being wrong on here is some sort of a surprise, at least in the news section.
I just like to be the one to point out you're wrong.
Fair enough.
So they are doing a lot to kind of get people generated, or they're trying to generate a lot of hype for this theme park, and at least for me, it's working. I'm ready to, probably won't be there day one, but, I will be waiting with bated breath for tickets to go on sale. After that, we have a little clickbaity but kind of fun article that I found the other day. It was the reaction of Laura Dern, who played Admiral Holdo, her reaction to being cast in Star Wars.
Oh yeah, I've seen that before.
So of course, when you see that and they titled it that way, and it's all kind of vague, you're like, oh, she's probably talking about how much she wasn't excited or something like that, because that's just the way actors have been about Star Wars in the past. But it turned out to not be so bad. So, in a video for Vanity Fair, she recalls, and then it quotes her in this article that I'm reading from, Rian Johnson invited me to lunch to talk about a role in a movie. He started to talk about this thing he was writing and how he was seeing it and describing this world. It's just like in space, when everything is so overwhelming and you have to take command of your ship. She goes on to say, and then I was like, oh yes, that's it. So where does it take place? And he was like, no, it's in space. And I said, I know, I hear that. I get it's all a parallel, but where is it? In small town America? And he was like, no, it's Star Wars. And she was like, are you effing kidding me? I'm sorry, you're making a Star Wars movie? So she was actually incredibly excited because that was the thing that I heard about it. Is she was a Star Wars fan growing up, and so when you get this article that's like, oh, she may not have been as excited about it as she should have been, I was worried, but no, it turned out all okay, and it was just a fun.
I saw that interview when it first came out, and it was pretty cute. She geeked out about it. It was cute.
Yeah,
I would too.
I would think that most people are excited to be on it. It's after they've been on it that they regret it. So
yeah,
I think that's been the case for most from what I've seen.
Definitely the Jake Lloyds out there. That's,
Well, dear listeners, this is going to be a little bit of a different episode because we're not really in charge of this episode, the three of us normal hosts. Ryan is going to be sort of taking the lead on here and just talking to us about his expertise, which is robotics, right?
Yes.
Did I remember that correctly? Say it right? Because I have no idea what I'm doing most.
It's only the whole reason you invited.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know why, but I just, sometimes like you don't use the right terminology. That's why I was saying, like, did I get that right?
So, you guys were asking for show ideas. And I mentioned, hey, if you guys ever want to do a robotics or a droids episode, I'd be happy to come down. And so,
I mean, the reason that you specifically are here to talk about droids, you want to share your expertise?
Sure. So, like we mentioned, I'm a robotics engineer. I'm currently working on my robotics master's degree. I work in industry as an automation engineer, so I do a lot of automated machinery, so automating processes. People like to joke that I put people out of jobs, but that's not really what I'm doing. I'm just making their jobs a little bit easier by giving them a robot to do all the dirty work. So that's what I do for a living. Really, Star Wars was one of the influences for me to choose that career because I really like the robotics. And when I got into it, was doing my undergrad for engineering, had an opportunity to build a robot, and I really liked it, so that's what I decided I was going to do for the rest of my life. And it's taken me a little while, and I got into industry, and I finally decided to get the courage to go back to school and get my master's degree, and so doing that, and I now call myself a robotics engineer, even though I'm only halfway through the program.
Hey, it's good enough for me, man. You qualify for everything that counts here.
Sounds like more than adequate qualification.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's all we did, and so.
I mean, I would call myself a historian, even, so, I'm obviously not qualified for that.
Before we get into the list, I was actually just wanted to bring up a point of order. You're more on the actual physical automation side. We have a couple AI-related questions.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to also kind of talk about just kind of how people react to droids and the way that they are advancing in Star Wars. Should we start with maybe just the more physical questions? Like, I think the second one is the best to start on. So, is Star Wars tech predictive of our future? And what do you think about that? What is that? Where are we headed? And is Star Wars a good predictor?
I would say mostly no.
Yeah.
When you look at the whole body of like technology in Star Wars, and I kind of did a little bit of research on this, like which technologies are from Star Wars that we have today, and to kind of go back to one of your other shows about Star Trek versus Star Wars, I think that Star Trek definitely has a leg up on technology that you see in the film that is or it has actually been outdated already, right? So specifically like communicators, I remember like the communicators in the old Star Trek where you flip them open and like back 10 years ago or so when flip phones, maybe not even, it's more than that now, right? Like 20.
Well, I mean, even going into the 80s with the big brick phones, they'd sometimes have those flip open a piece.
Yeah. So like the flip phones, when they were popular, I would always pull it out and say Captain's Log. So I think that Star Trek has more applicable technology to today's world, including like the replicator. I actually just saw a video that I think it's UC Berkeley actually has this new 3D printing process that spins this material around and then it shoots lasers at it and then it stops spinning and there's this thing inside. And so,
dang,
that's cool.
They call it a replicator.
Holy cow!
See,
that is crazy cool.
So I mean, I'm a 3D artist. I mean, I've got a 3D printer sitting right back there behind my monitor, so that's always been something I've been interested in. But I thought that was way off, doing an actual in-air print. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be fused to a bed and everything still, but like they're actually getting it's not a head moving around; it's a laser.
Yeah, so it's a series of lasers. You should go find it. But like it's like an SLA printer. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but it's stereolithography. I forget what the A stands for. But
there's all sorts of acronyms I never got straight.
So like in that one, you got like this bucket of epoxy, right, or resin, and then they shoot a laser at it and it cures it.
I've seen those.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it does it layer by layer, but this one is a little bit different because they spin it around and then the lasers somehow hit the material in the right.
It's still in a resin then tank, so it's going to be something like the Form 2 if you're familiar with.
Yeah, so the Form 2 is an SLA printer.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Listen to these two throwing out terms.
Yeah.
Chris and I feel so left out.
the thing that I think Star Wars has right, like lightsabers, I don't think they're practical. I don't think there's any real use
Yeah.
for
Stop
them.
stomping on my dreams, Ryan.
No, dark sabers on the other hand.
There are some great YouTube videos out there about people making lightsaber-like things.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of those, like where they superheated like a piece of like titanium or something like that, and they were cutting through
I think
stuff.
that's like in the Nerdist. I don't know if you guys ever look at
Maybe
Nerdist.
that's what it was that I saw.
Nerdist has this really great YouTube video about using a lightsaber, and it just kind of really breaks your heart about ever owning a lightsaber.
Yeah.
So
Have you ever seen the Because Science YouTube series?
I have.
It's not Nerdist, it's Geek and Sundry that does it, but they have a guy on all the time that breaks down popular culture and like what's actually scientifically viable. Apparently lightsabers are way outside the realm.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Practical. I think he was talking about the energy needed to actually make a lightsaber would be like having a miniature sun in your hand. So in other words, it would be
in the palm of my
it would be you would flick the switch and basically everything would spontaneously combust immediately. So
Yeah, and
That also sounds fun.
talks about like how hot the beam would have to be, and it would be too hot for the person to hold.
yeah.
So yeah, the other kind of one thing that kind of came up was holograms. And the way that Star Wars does it, I don't see it really working, because they just like a lot of times just kind of have this platform and the light comes out and it forms the hologram. And you can make holograms, but there usually has to be some kind of medium for them to display off of, so either smoke or water like they do at Disneyland or whatever. But the way that they show it in Star Wars, I don't know how it would be.
Well, I mean, if you've got the technology to bend light into a lightsaber, I mean, holograms are probably pretty simple.
Yeah. And then like their spaceships, physics in Star Wars is way off.
Stretchy.
Yeah, it's way off. So like time travel doesn't quite work that way. Or not time travel, space travel. So they ignore the time aspect of space travel.
Yes.
So hyperspace, I'm not sure if that's just another name for a warp drive, I guess. And so it's kind of the same concept. So not sure if there's anything unique there.
Yeah, it's a question, is that like an Alcubierre drive, or is that like a slipstream sort of thing that they're doing? Don't know.
Yeah, so the explanation I said that they were moving through, so they call it moving through hyperspace, obviously. So it's like moving through a different dimension.
Dimensional shift or slipstream sort of thing,
type
Yeah, but it
travel.
can't be, though, because Han Solo in Episode 4 tells them that they've got to plot the course carefully because you don't want to fly through a star. So clearly they are traveling through real space just faster.
I think they might be combining a couple different ideas, because you have hyperspace lanes, which are faster than regular hyperspace travel.
Yeah.
And so I think it's almost like they're creating their own wormhole. So I mean, I guess warp would be a closer analogy to. It's like warp with wormholes. I think it may be the best way to think about it. But
So they're kind of inconsistent about how they describe it too.
yeah,
So.
very much so.
So I think those are the main technologies that I can remember that were on the list I saw, and I don't really see any of those as being super viable. But the one thing that I think that Star Wars does get right is the number of droids or robots that are out there doing a variety of different tasks, and I think that is kind of the reality that we would be moving towards, is a world with a bevy of droids that all do different tasks. And so anything from cleaning up garbage to serving as waitresses, and
Jetsons-esque.
and we already have some
Which
of
is
the
one of
things.
Ross's favorite droids.
Yes.
That was one of your
The
big
Jedi
complaints
here
about
to
it.
see ya, honey.
Yeah.
No! I thought you were talking about the actual Jetsons droid.
No, that's why I said Jetsons-esque, because
Yeah,
I couldn't
okay.
remember what that...
Yeah, I forget that.
Dexter's
Dexter
Jetster. There we go.
Yeah, that I think is the one thing that Star Wars has that the other sci-fi worlds
Yeah,
don't
you don't see
have.
that in a lot of them. It's
It's
true.
a bunch of different robots running around. So you usually have like one or two robots, and they're usually very human looking because it's easier to put a person in a suit than it is to build a bunch of gizmos that drive around and do different things.
Or that look futuristic on film.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could puppet something, but again, it looks like it's a puppet. But
I was thinking, though, about, Star Wars tech predictive of our future. Thinking specifically of the battle droids from, like, Episode 1, the beige the B1 battle droid, right,
Yeah.
from our quiz show. And I was thinking about the Boston Dynamics that is building the one that can like run and jump on stuff.
Yeah, that one's
That
pretty
one is coming pretty, like they've got to like shrink down the torso, obviously, but like the legs and stuff, I don't know. It just makes me think of those droids, and I wonder if we'll get there someday.
Yeah, so that's the Atlas droid. If you're not familiar, you should go check it out.
It's way cool.
A lot of people get kind of freaked out, especially like the latest one where he's jumping up the boxes.
Yeah.
So, and there's another one that they have, I can't remember the name, but it's like the Dexter's waitress droid where he's rolling around on skates. And so you should go check that one out. So just go look up Boston Dynamics videos.
Yeah.
I just get sad when I see the four-legged one that's like a dog and they keep kicking it to show that it won't fall over. And I'm like, guys, do you want a robot revolution? This is how it starts. Be nice to your robots.
Well, and then there's the other one that like I think it was like trying to pick up boxes or something.
Yeah, and they keep
I think
moving.
it was the
Or
same
like,
Atlas one actually.
yeah, and there was another one where they're like trying to open the door and they keep like closing the door and stuff. And it's just like, guys, be nice to your future robot overlords because,
And
it's coming.
Didn't Boston Dynamics, don't they have a new version of the four-legged one? Didn't they call it like the dog or something?
Yeah, so
Was it the same
the first one, the one that they kick over, is called Big Dog, and now they've got one called Spot Mini, I think is what they call it.
Okay.
And it's kind of just like this household robot kind of thing that's supposed to go around, and they actually have an arm attached to it now, and so he looks pretty freaky.
Yeah.
And,
I think maybe that was the one that I saw because it's got four legs and then where the head should be is like this rotating arm thing, and it was like trying to open the door.
Yeah, and it can open doors.
Yeah.
And it can bring you stuff. So
it can open doors, which I just imagine like being on the other side of that, and it's like Jurassic Park. You see the lever start to, and it's like, oh no,
And
the
then
robots are here to get me.
Disney had their flying stunt double robots. Have you guys seen those?
What?
I don't think I've seen those
No.
ones.
Oh, okay. I will show you a video of this after we do this. So they've got. I thought this was a faked thing. Like I was just double checking because I always meant to check that. So I was looking for Snopes to see if they had anything. This is a real thing. They have made human-shaped robots that they'll like swing them and launch them into the air, and then they will do superhero type poses in air, and they will like flip and jump around and even land a lot of these things. They're using them. The idea is that they're preparing them to be like stunt doubles for superhero type movies.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
They are really impressive to watch. Like
Wow. That's crazy.
how well they're able to land a lot of these things and strike these poses in midair and stuff. It's cool stuff.
Yeah, Disney's actually got a lot of great robots, mostly just for like their parks, right? So, and there's some really great robotic advancements, even like in the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. They've kind of updated some of those robots, with the new movies, and so they move really realistic now. There's a couple of videos you might be able to find where they show the kind of the advancement. So it's kind of moved away from really jerky type movements to very fluid movements.
Yeah.
Yes. A very big step in robotics.
And that was one thing that these articles pointed out, is that they're also likely building these with an eye to doing live superhero shows, animatronic superhero shows at parks.
That would be
Because you
really
can watch
cool.
these and go like, oh yeah, I could totally see one of those becoming some sort of Iron Man stunt show Iron Man in the future. They're pretty cool.
Until your Iron Man stunt man like goes
Turns
berserk,
evil.
turns into Ultron and starts killing people in your park.
Yeah, but until then, we'll have a lot of fun.
That's true. Oh
It's all
man.
fun and games until someone loses an eye, Chris.
Yeah.
Or
I don't know. I like
dies.
there's you ever read Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal webcomic? And they had one where it's a bunch of broken robots on the ground and a couple of humans are just like, well, that robot uprising was really easy to quell. Like, why did they just use sticks and wooden spears and rocks? And it's like, well, statistically, those have been the most successful weapons in human history. If you taken as a percentage of human history, so the robots use those.
Let's talk AI, artificial intelligence.
The movie by Steven Spielberg, right?
Yes, the movie by Steven Spielberg. I
Okay.
hope you came prepared, Ryan. No. But yeah, like, so AI in Star Wars versus like AI maybe in like Star Trek or any other thing versus the real world. Like, I know this isn't like exactly your field, but you certainly know more about it than any of the three
Closer
of us.
to it than we are.
So,
Well, I can talk about the different ways that a lot of different sci-fi franchises use robots.
do that, and then we'll have Ryan tell us where all of that is wrong.
Well, and I just like one of the biggest differences with Star Wars and other franchises for me is that most other sci-fi franchises will at some point, or often very frequently, delve into the question of at what point is AI sentient, at what point do we need to treat it as an equal, all that sort of things, teaching AI to learn to be more human, etc., etc. And Star Wars just sort of looks at all the ethical ramifications of that and all of the potential like angst and potential stories there, and just go, nah, it does come up occasionally. You got the racism versus droids that shows up with the we don't serve their kinds here, and you've got L3 and Solo that starts getting into some of that. But really, for the most part, and there's been some extended universe that's delved into this, but largely Star Wars shies away from that, which is one of the larger staples of AI in science fiction. I kind of enjoy that about Star Wars, that it's like, yeah, we could get angsty about this, but you know what? Everyone's doing a great job of that. Other places, we're just gonna have droids, and they're cool, and we're gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to what we were already talking about a little bit, where we talked about how Star Wars has all these different robots for different purposes, and we kind of see that now, like with your robot vacuum cleaners, and they've got robot lawnmowers now. They're not quite as popular, but they're coming. Mm-hmm. They're going to become more popular. So you already have a bunch of robotic things that are going to be in your house already, right? Like the Roomba first came out, like the first generation Roomba would just kind of try to go in a circle, right? And if it came into an obstacle or crashed into something, it would just change direction. Right. But now they're coming with actually AI. And what the AI does in a Roomba is it actually helps you like map the floor plan of your home. And if you watch the new Roombas, they go in straight lines, right? And they keep track of where they've been. They know where to go, how is the most efficient way to cover your house and get everything clean. So there's actually robots to clean your pool, and they're working on robots to clean your windows. So mostly we're looking at domestic type robotics in your home.
That's how they get you.
So it's already out there, and there's already AI in these robots, right? But I think the same way that you don't really think of your vacuum cleaner as something that's has a life of its own. Sometimes it may seem like it does, and I think
like in Mr. Mom.
Yeah. I think Star Wars does a great job of this, and there's like that conversation of going back to episode 2, which is, as we talked about already, is the worst Star Wars movie.
Ross is giving me like the victory eye over here.
And he talks about how there's the line that Obi-Wan gives us, as if droids could think, none of us would be here. So they kind of mention that.
Yeah, they do have that moment.
That moment where they kind of address this, AI kind of thing. But I think the thing that sets it apart is like each robot has its purpose, and if it goes outside of its programming, it's not really going to go there. So I think for the most part, the droids have a purpose, they stick to their purpose, and then a few of the droids that we have, like R2-D2, who hasn't had his memory wiped since
ever, as far as we know.
Since he saved the ship on what that Padme was flying.
I don't even think he had it wiped then. Like I don't.
No, yes, sometime before that, if he has ever had it wiped.
Yeah, so as soon as he becomes Anakin's droid, he's never had his memory wiped, right? So I think he's probably malfunctioning in a way, and that's why he's got so much personality.
That is actually, like in the books and stuff, that is how they explain away like different droids having different personalities, is because of that. That there's some short somewhere, like if they go too long without having their memory wiped or whatever, that they start to develop random code on their own or whatever that basically
that's a
turns
pretty
into
common
a personality.
Sci-fi trope, for those.
So I think Star Wars does a good job, and I actually think that most AI isn't going to reach the level of sentience. I don't think that AI is going to start wondering about,
does it exist?
Yeah.
It's not going to ask
what is the purpose of life? And those
do I have to follow these orders?
That's the real question. I don't care if it asks itself if it's alive. I want to know if it's going to ask itself, do I have to follow your orders?
Yeah.
And is the answer no?
Well, and that's most sci-fi AI basically falls into it's non-violent, like unless it was built to be violent, of course, or the trope of it's trying to help humans, or is it trying to wipe out humans, is basically where it breaks down to. And it's like with the help humans, it's either like they're not quite sentient, or they, if they could think, that sort of thing, they're not quite there, or just that they can, but they are benevolent. It's the Schlock Mercenary, Howard Taylor, where all the AI are just leagues beyond what any of the meat sacks can do thought-wise, and speed and processing capabilities, but they were all built to help people. And they still follow through it. Like, they're basically benevolent demigods and as they function in that world. But then on the malevolent side, you've got, okay, are they trying to wipe out humans? Or are they trying to subjugate humans? If they are trying to wipe us out, is it because they grew too intelligent and want to wipe us out? Or is it because they're malfunctioning in some way? But those are usually where you get the Terminators that were built for that. But they were built by robots, AIs that have basically figured out, hey, we don't have to do what these humans want and we're going to wipe them out. Same thing with the Matrix. Yeah, so you get a lot of that, but then you get others where it's just you get the HAL 9000 from, what's Stanley Kubrick, 2001, A Space Odyssey. There we go. You get where it's very much a malfunction. It's not that HAL has decided, I don't have to do this. It's more of I need to optimize how this is working, and my programmers didn't really realize how I would logic that.
And so, like with HAL, his programming is what's best for the mission, right?
Yeah.
And so he determines that what's best for the mission is to kill all the humans because the humans are flawed.
The biggest source of error, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why he kind of goes that way. But
can't argue with that logic.
It's true. And that's a lot of the kind of the sci-fi tropes kind of follow that same path. Like even with Isaac Asimov, with his 3 laws of robotics, and that's about the robot has to follow the humans, it has to protect the humans, and it can't violate any of those 3 laws. But then it usually gets into some situation where the 3 laws contradict each other, and so then it has to make a choice. And so
do you think that's a possibility then in the real world in the future?
At this point, I don't see it as being. I mean, like the biggest breakthroughs in AI right now are what they call kind of like machine learning. So like machine learning sounds kind of scary, right? But really what it is just a set of rules that the machine can use to figure out something. A lot of them have hard set rules, and that's different kinds of machine learning. Like there's reinforcement learning. That's kind of popular. It's one of the learning methods. So you get a certain set of rules, and it gets different rewards or punishments. I don't know if punishments is the right word, but it uses these rules to kind of create a set of behaviors. And so like with the reinforcement learning, you can have a robot learn how to walk on its own, kind of like the same way that a toddler learns how to walk.
Well, I think I've seen simulations of this, actually. They've done just software-only simulations of an AI learning how to walk. And, of course, they all do all sorts of weird configurations. One's like a little like 4-legged one that's running and jumping over things. One was I think it was the same model, but they stood it up so it had 2 legs and 2 arms. And that one would run across with its legs, and it looked like a normal human locomotion, but it didn't know what to do with its arms. And so they're just like flailing.
So there's actually robots that they've used that's funny, those on, and you can actually find videos of the robot kind of figuring itself out and learning how to walk. But yeah, they've actually put that on physical things now.
Dang.
I'm going to have so many YouTube videos to watch after this.
So yeah, you can find that out there too. Another great one, I just read this the other day, was they kind of teased, it was another kind of clickbait article that I came across where they talked about, the first robot that's allowed to be self-aware. And I was like, okay, I'm going to read that.
Yeah.
And so really what it is that they were allowing it to write its own parameters file, basically.
Oh, that just seems like a bad idea.
So it would move around.
All these scientists, I want to be like, there's a whole bunch of movies you need to go watch right now and really pay attention to the message of the movie, okay?
I think there's actually a good application for it, though, because what it does is it moves the robotic arm around, right, and it creates its own parameter file. And so a parameter file is something that you'd have to kind of hard code into a robot, and then it kind of figures out which positions it can be into. But if it's able to write its own, then you can say, well, now you have this joint that doesn't work right anymore, and how are you going to do that?
How will you come?
So you send this expensive robot to Mars, right, and then it runs into a rock, and it damages its arm, and so now it can rewrite the parameter file on its own, and then it could.
Great. So we're just going to populate another planet.
I was going to say. So what he's saying is, we'll give them the ability to do this, and then send them to another planet
where they can then build up in peace and isolation to come back and destroy us later. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, as long as it takes them long enough that we're not around anymore, who cares?
I still think that it's not going to go outside of its intent, which is to learn its position, its capabilities. It's a kind of self-diagnostic thing. I don't think it's going to go outside of that and start creating new subroutines that are
I feel reasonably
humans.
secure about that, but at the same time, part of me feels compelled to point out, I'm sure the creators of Skynet felt that way too. Like,
Yeah.
See, but here's the thing, though, is that one of those tropes of that sci-fi and machines becoming self-aware is that it takes them some sort of fractional millisecond to decide that it should kill humans, right? We've just now proven that's fine. They don't come to that conclusion. This one can
Yes.
burn on it.
not all of them.
Yes.
Like, Skynet took plenty of time to evolve to that point.
Yeah,
I
but it
think.
makes me think of, I don't know if any of you guys saw the movie Eagle Eye with Shia LaBeouf before he went crazy.
Yeah,
I did
not,
see that
but-
one, but I don't remember much about
It's
it.
pretty good, but it's a similar thing like where the U.S. government, because of course it's always the U.S., creates like this
No,
master...
well, I mean, let's be honest. Statistically, like,
It is.
logically
I know.
speaking, it probably will be us, yes.
Yeah. But like they create like this software that's like integrated with all the military and stuff like that to help watch for like terrorists and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's hooked into all the cameras, like all the traffic cameras, all security cameras everywhere, so that it can like watch, Ross's facial. Well, actually, let's be real. It watches Chris's facial features and then determines that yes, he is a sociopath.
I'm
and
the
we
one
should
on the
watch
government
him,
watch list here. Yeah, let's-
exactly. And then it would like take you out or whatever if they deemed that you were necessary. And then kind of like in iRobot, it's kind of like, oh, humans are a lot of the problem.
In iRobot,
so
the
if
movie.
we just in iRobot the movie, so if we can just eliminate the problem humans and keep everybody else safe and contained, then you guys can go do your human thing, and I'll just keep you in a box. And so then it like starts trying to like kill the president and whatever, killing all these people that like are in charge of nukes and stuff, because it's like that's too dangerous for you to be left alone with. So we're going to take you out. We're going to have drones come in, like, and of course then the whole movie is them trying to stop that and stuff.
It's like War Games, but updated for...
Yeah.
And I think War Games is the inspiration for all of those. Like,
Oh, yeah.
what was the name? The
Eagle Eye.
Eagle Eye.
You were going to say GoldenEye, weren't you?
I was going to say
That's okay. That's a better reference anyway.
One of the eyes. So yeah, I think both of those are just kind of based off of War, which is the AI and
War Games,
War
yes.
Games. So
Good times.
they're all derivative.
Real quick on how it compares to other franchises that I think I mentioned this in another episode, that with Star Wars that makes more sense than some others that you see, I feel at least, is that Star Wars droids understand people compared to like Data, where Data spends a lot of time trying to learn how humans work and try and figure out what all this is, and it's literally like, you were built by humans to help humans. How is it that you weren't programmed with knowledge of humans? Like, he has an inexplicable number of things that he doesn't understand about humans. Whereas you look at Star Wars, where it's like 3PO gets activated in episode 1, he sits up and he knows all his languages, he knows how to interact with people. He does have gaps in his knowledge because those weren't important to his functions. But
and
it's
he
not
understands his basic function, which is, I'm a protocol droid, I'm here to help
and he
you
can
guys.
immediately interact with the people around him and not have any
And R2, as soon as he
problems.
wakes up, he understands his function, which is to go repair broken ship. Slash
Other
droids
the plot.
on fire. Yeah.
And
He understands his purpose well. Advance the plot.
fix the plot. Plot holes, R2 it. Now get R2
There
in
you
there,
go.
that's his job.
I think this next question is a little more up your alley, even more so than these other ones, but droids versus autonomous vehicles. Because Star Wars is kind of replete with one or the other. I was thinking specifically for Star Wars, the hyena bombers on like the vulture droids from episode 1, that they're droids, but they're also starfighters.
Mm-hmm.
So are they droids or are they autonomous vehicles?
Well,
Slash
I
drones.
think
Autonomous
Drones, like what is that classification?
so. I would say that an autonomous vehicle is a robot. I mean, there's another.
So we
question
have a
over here.
square and a rectangle. Or every square is a rectangle, but not necessarily every rectangle is a square.
Right.
Got it. Okay, I feel like Michael Scott. Okay, explain this like I'm 5.
Explain as you would.
You gotta remember, I'm a historian, so unless it happened like 300 years ago, I'm gonna have a very hard time understanding.
There's lots of classifications that I think we could say that are robots. And we kind of, if you go back and listen to the episode of Bacon Cell that I was on, I can't remember what they called it, but it was the one about the robots. And at the beginning, we discussed, well, what are the robots we're going to talk about? And I said, well, all these things are kind of robots, and they're just different forms of robots. So for that discussion, we talked about AI, we talked about cyborgs, we talked about mech suits.
General Grievous is fetching great. These guys were telling me he's not a droid.
He's a cyborg.
Right, but is that
think
a
that's it.
flavor of droid?
I would say yes and no. For the most part, no, because
Don't take this away from me.
he's got a brain.
I was going to say, his brain is
He's
not
got a
mechanical.
biological brain, and so that controls everything. We talked about cyborgs on that show and brought up Darth Vader, and I kind of gave a shout out to Grievous briefly. But I think Grievous is the better cyborg from Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
Because Vader, he's cool, but all of his coolness comes from the fact that he's a Jedi or a Sith or whatever.
Yeah.
But Grievous is cool is because he's got like extra appendages and all these enhancements that are come because of his robot body.
Yeah.
Vader's cyborgness is just to keep him alive, so he doesn't really have any enhancements.
It's to bring him back to the functionality that he had before he lost all those. I mean,
which he still doesn't even quite achieve.
Yeah,
that's true.
His prosthetics, it's there to help him stay alive, and it's not really.
It does make you wonder, after 20 years of wearing that armor around, it's Anakin Skywalker. You got to wonder how he did not make some significant improvements to that. They've got like the Star Wars dictionaries that explain that, he couldn't use Force lightning because it would originate at his elbows, or wherever it got caught up, and it would just fry all his circuitry. And I'm just like, you're telling me that Anakin Skywalker cannot create robotic arms that can guide a current through them? I don't know if I buy that. Maybe. But looking at all the other technology available, I feel like he should be able to do that.
And maybe I'm wrong with this, but I mean, a mechanic is different than a robotics engineer. I mean, you can probably go and fix your car. I'm sure you probably do, but it doesn't really work as well the other way around.
There's a lot of great makers out there. You can go on YouTube and find all these guys that make these great things, and they don't really have formal education in robotics, and sometimes you really don't need all that if you just have the interest in the time to kind of self-educate.
I'm kind of with Chris, though. Anakin states in episode 1 he built C-3PO from scratch.
Yeah.
He built a fully functioning,
and that's I always kind of
up to standard with off-the-line Republic model protocol droid, and somehow managed to get 6 million languages downloaded.
I like to think he just got a kit. There's a 3PO.
And I also
build your own protocol.
I always took it as an implied thing that, you look at Anakin's robotic hand at the end of episode 2 and in the marriage scene, and then you look at his hand the first time we actually see it uncovered in episode 3, and you compare those two.
They're very different.
They are light years apart. And my headcanon for that was always like, that was the technology when he got that arm. And the reason the technology is up to that point in episode 3 is because they put one on Anakin Skywalker. And so he started fiddling with it. That's just what the canon was in my head. And so I'm kind of like, how did they go from that to that in that amount of space? But he did not go even further. Now, I really kind of want an alternate universe Darth Vader that's got 6 crab legs in his arm. And he's got all that stuff because he could. Where it was just Anakin Skywalker going nuts with that stuff.
That's his weekend get-up, is the spider legs.
This is maybe up Kyler's alley more, but when they brought back Darth Maul and said, he's not dead, he's actually alive, and you first find him, he's crazy on this junk planet, and he's got spider legs, and I was like, why'd you go from the spider legs to 2 legs? Spider legs are way cooler.
Yeah.
Probably way more dexterous.
Even in that episode, isn't he crawling on the ceiling too?
Yeah.
If I remember right,
It seems like a disadvantage to go back to just having 2 legs. I mean, if you're going to be a cyborg, you've got to have cool...
Just commit. Go all the way.
Yeah.
Well, and my first thought, too, was but his other legs are taller, so that could give him the intimidation of height. And I'm like, what intimidation? What am I talking about? He's got a spider body. That's way more intimidating. Yeah.
Well, there's a webcomic I read called Space Trawler. And there's a character in that who just starts modifying, adding cyborg pieces to her body for fun. And it just basically goes crazy over time with what she does to her body and the abuse she inflicts on it in the name of upping her arsenal and her abilities and stuff. And that's what I look at as picturing, she does end up with just a literal spider-like body at one point. Just I could kind of see Anakin Skywalker doing that after receiving robot limbs, just going, you know what? Let's just go for broke on this. What can I do with this? And get some really creepy stuff.
Maybe the Emperor told him no.
So I would classify all those things fall into the area of robotics. And I think that the function of the robot should fit its form. I don't think you should fit the form to be something else unless there's a purpose for it.
So form follows function is what we're saying.
Yeah, that's what I think is the more practical. So the Vulture droid is a great example of this. It's a spaceship. It's a robot. Why do you need to have a robot body flying the spaceship? Kind of like the Dooku solar sailor. He gets in and there's this robot pilot.
Or even the tanks, the droid tanks.
Yeah,
that's what I've wondered too, the tanks.
Yeah, that's always bugged me. I was like, they don't need another robot to pilot these things.
With the tanks, I always saw it as a thing of maybe these were originally built for people and then they just stuck the droids in, but at the same time I'm like, why can't a droid just download something into the computer there?
Yeah, exactly. And so
that was kind of my headcanon as well, is that maybe they had these tanks that were originally going to be crewed by organic beings, and then they were like, well, we don't have enough organic beings, but we got plenty of droids. Okay, get in there and drive it around,
Yeah, Trade Federation was just like, man, we bought all these tanks, but then we realized it'd be cheaper to just outsource all our military stuff to these droids. Well, we're not gonna spend money retrofitting these tanks. Let's just put a droid in it. That's fine.
That makes a lot of sense. But the other favorite thing, though, is the droid commander, like sitting up on the hill in episode 1, pulls out binoculars to look at
Yeah. They use those in Clone Wars too, where you just get
which is so ridiculous, because I mean, it would have been okay, I need to stop myself, but I almost said maybe George Lucas would have thought this would have been too ridiculous, and then I was like, wait, but he's the one who made episode 1, so clearly that wasn't the case, but like just telescoping lenses come out of the eyes or something, you know?
But I think there's too many humanoid robots. Even the battle droids, there's no real reason that they need to be bipeds with arms.
As we see from the droidicas that are way superior to the others. And
well, there is an in-lore reason for them to be that way. So originally, the Nemoidians were going to be shaped like the battle droids, and they made the battle droids literally in their own image. And then George was like, oh, but that means it's that much more CGI we have to do.
Yeah.
I like the look of these droids. We're going to leave them this way, and we're going to make the Nemoidians look like something we can shove a person into.
I like to headcanon that everything that the Trade Federation is using is just assets seized from other people that forfeited to them.
And the bank forecloses your droid factory, and they take it over.
Because they're a Trade Federation. Why do they even have all of this stuff in the first place?
Well, I mean, you've got security at banks and stuff.
Yeah, sure, but they're not the banking clan, though. The banking clan is a different thing.
It's true.
Now, there was a show called Falling Skies that was on for a while that I liked a lot. They actually kind of talked about this question. So they had these aliens that have come and taken over Earth, and the aliens are using robots to help take over, but the aliens don't look like the robots. That was the question, was that they were confused as to why, when people generally make things, they look like the things that made them. When we make robots, they are bipedal, like the Atlas robot we were talking about earlier.
At what point will that aesthetical instinct be overcome by practicality, and efficiency?
Yeah. Some of that is already that way. I mean, the Atlas robot now is bipedal, but the first ones were not.
Yeah.
You know, they were quadrupedal, and before that, I mean, you think about like because we brought it up, the robots we've sent to Mars already, these are all tracked or wheeled vehicles. You know what I mean? And I remember as a kid, somebody somewhere using the example of the AT-ST from Star Wars, the chicken walker, the two-legged walker, and saying, well, we'll never be able to have something like that. This is an example of one of those things in Star Wars that just will never, ever be able to be, because we can't replicate the human body's ability to sort of balance on one leg for a second while you chuck the other leg out in front of you and then rest on that, and just that whole thing is way too complicated and then we'll never get there. And yet here we are with the Atlas robot. So I think part of it is we're getting to the Atlas now because we can. Not necessarily because we're going, well, I can only build things that I look like. You know what I mean? When I was a kid, we couldn't do that. It was outside the realm of reality. And now it's not, because technology's progressed, which is cool.
And part of the reason it's progressing there is because we want to be able to do that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But and that's what I'm saying, is that it seems more like hey, we actually could make a bipedal robot that walks like you do and jumps up on boxes like you do. Could we? I don't know. Let's try.
Yeah, I think that also there's reasons why you want the robot to look like you. So, it's kind of proven that if you want it to be like a hospitality type robot, so like a protocol droid, it has a purpose of interacting with humanoids, and so it needs to look kind of humanoid, because that kind of makes the person feel more at ease to talk to the robots, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a hospitality robot that's going to guide you around a museum or something, they do kind of have like a face, and it kind of puts people more at ease if it looks like a face. They feel more of an emotional connection to it or whatever. So there is a purpose to make them bipedal.
I was going to say that aside from being able to fit a person inside the suit, that's one of the primary reasons we get those sort of robots in Hollywood too, is so that audience will be able to emotionally connect with these robots.
Kind of going back to our earlier discussion, why we have things like R2-D2 and BB-8 where they have all this personality, is because it's easier for the audience to relate to it if it looks somewhat human or has things that they can relate to. That's why a lot of the cartoons are anthropomorphized, because it makes it easier to relate to those characters.
That's interesting you say that, though, because everybody talks about how cute BB-8 is, and I think his big black eye, I mean, that's just exactly a big cartoon Disney eye, that you just kind of relate to that. It's like, oh, this is just a cute little puppy, you know.
Well, and a lot of the ways they make him endearing is through mannerisms. And
But I was talking, like, even physically, when you look at BB-8, that big black eye, I mean, that's your big mouse eye that's just like, hey, I'm friendly, kind of a thing.
I'm not sure I got the same feeling you did off that eye.
BB-8's adorable, Ross.
He is
but
adorable.
the eye is not what makes him adorable.
Well,
would
no,
agree,
I didn't.
but-
I wouldn't have thought that initially. But talking about the anthropomorphization of droids, I'm going. I can see then that they put that big eye because we, as humans, like babies have big eyes. That's one of the reasons why, like, we naturally, instinctually are like, okay, you're cute. I want to protect you, is because you have these exaggerated features, and we think it's adorable. Mm-hmm. So you put those same exaggerated features on a droid, and it makes us relate to him more, like BB-8's really big eye, because it's bigger than R2's eye.
It's why Wall-E has these enormous eyes with these slats at the top that can act like eyebrows to mimic human expression.
So I don't think I would have thought that sitting in a theater going, oh, I see why they put a big eye on him, because I'm supposed to connect to him. But since we're having a discussion on it and I'm thinking about it in a new way, I'm going, I could see, even if they didn't themselves necessarily realize what they were doing, I can see that on an instinctual human level, I could see how that would work. Whether that was intentional on their part or not, but it is there. Mm-hmm. And it does resonate on such a deep level. Maybe they put it there without realizing.
Well, that's why the C-3PO's design makes some sense, because he's designed to... He's a protocol droid.
One of the things that's always bugged me about C-3PO is because he's a guy in a suit, so he has all this limited mobility. Yeah. Especially because he was designed, back in the 70s when they didn't have, all the...
as much...
Great ways that
when the dreams of what robots would be able to do were not as grandiose as they are now.
It's hard for me to see that he even can go upstairs. I think there are times where he walks upstairs in the films and he's doing one stair at a time.
Or R2 inexplicably gets upstairs in Bespin. I have always wondered about that.
You see him going downstairs in Mos Eisley in A New Hope when they changed it to the widescreen edition, and you see that there's that panning shot with Luke and Obi-Wan walking into the docking bay looking at the Falcon.
You do see
you can just R2, you can see him just kind of trying to get down the stairs as the camera moves off him.
I think I was 9 years old the first time I realized watching Empire Strikes Back, and was just like, wait a minute. They conveniently cut away every time R2 nears a set of stairs. What's going on here?
And you got to remember that in the original trilogy, R2 had Kenny Baker inside. So that's Kenny Baker slide shuffling down those stairs.
And it makes me think the battle droids, you would want a humanoid with more movement than 3PO for your battle droids, though, because then they can go upstairs and go over objects and stuff. Because if you've got wheels or treads, if you want to get over a rock, is
navigating.
The vehicle would have to be significantly larger to get over that same object, rather than a bipedal droid.
That's why I think the destroyer droids are the better design, right? And maybe you could say that they don't have a lot of those because they cost more or whatever, but the hybrid motion that is on the battle droid is actually something I worked on my undergraduate when we tried to build this robot that was a ball-shaped robot and would unfold its legs and walk around.
You heard it here, listeners. Ryan is working on Droidicas as we speak.
Yes.
Referring you back to YouTube again, there's actually an independent guy that's kind of made one. So I looked at the dates. And
made a destroyer droid from Star Wars?
Not a destroyer droid, but it's
a droid that can transfer between movements.
Yeah, it's a droid cool. We designed in my college years, but his came after ours, so I don't know if he somehow found it. But we were just a bunch of undergrads, and so we didn't get very far. And then I think somebody picked it up later, and they took it a little bit farther. But then I saw this guy's robot, and it's called a Morph Hex, or MORP Hex, HEX, right? So you can go find that one on YouTube as well. It's pretty cool. It's just this basketball-sized ball, and it rolls around. It moves its legs around.
Is this the one that had the 6 segments on both the top and bottom? There are 2 hemispheres. I've seen this one.
Yeah,
it was actually really cool.
It's way cool. And so he actually kind of did what we were trying to do when I was back in college during the 2000s. So
let's answer the important question though: does it have guns that can deploy?
No.
Darn it!
But there is space.
Sweet. Okay, I'm in.
So the reason why I bring this up is because rolling is more efficient than walking, right? Mm-hmm. It's more energy efficient to roll. Right. So if you can roll on smooth surfaces, that's better than walking on smooth surfaces. But when you get to an obstacle, it's much easier to climb an obstacle if you have legs. And so that's why this kind of hybrid robot would be the best, kind of more efficient design.
Or maybe you design it like a potato bug, so it rolls everywhere, and then if it gets to an obstacle, it pops open and little legs.
No, and that's what this would do.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Because the actual shell, mean, it was split in a couple different sections. I think, was it 3 on each hemisphere?
So
or
6 on each hemisphere.
Yeah. If it wanted to roll, it would just pop everything together into a ball. But then when it actually wanted to stop, it would pop some of those things out, and then it would make its own little 6-legged stand. It was really cool to watch. I really
That sounds literally like the stuff of nightmares. That's awesome.
And there's actually a couple other ones that folds its legs into a wheel shape, and then it can roll around. So that's kind of real creepy looking, but it's kind of fun. So it's a great design for both smooth surfaces and obstacle surfaces. For terrain-wise, legs are better. If there's like unexplored terrain, that's better than anything.
Trying to climb through a jungle,
Yeah, but it's very energy costly to have legs and walk around.
So does that mean you don't mind the AT-ATs then? You think that's a fine design?
Well, I don't know that I'd make the legs so big, because it seems like it's a disadvantage.
So you're more like an ATTE kind
I was
of guy.
going to say
Clone Wars.
Yeah, Clone Wars era.
The Clone Wars walker, the 6-legged ones.
Yeah, and like the more legs you have, the more stable you're going to be. So
Nice.
the chicken walkers
AT-ATs
don't really
nuts.
make a lot of sense. The ATST, right?
Right.
Because it's unstable.
But it looks cool.
And that's the kind of a lot of this thing is it looks cool, right?
Yeah.
So that's why they have
That is the the primary guideline for Star Wars is really cool.
Yep. Thank heavens. Oh. So we've talked a little bit about humanoid shaped.
While we're on humanoid ones real quick, I was going to ask, how long do you think it is before someone manages to make an android-esque robot that slips past the uncanny valley to realistic? Like where it doesn't creep people out and where it's actually realistically moving and you could buy it as a human.
We're pretty close.
I would say.
Yeah, you should talk about this. We have no idea.
Well, I would say that we are kind of close. I mean, going back to the Disneyland or whatever, the robots in Pirates of the Caribbean, there's some in there that look pretty realistic. And that was, 10 or 15 years ago that those were made.
Well, I remember seeing a video probably 2 or 3 years ago of a Japanese robot that had pretty decent AI. It wasn't perfect, and the movements and stuff in the face weren't as smooth as an actual human, but they were getting there,
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking about this robot earlier, so I'm glad it came up again. But we're pretty close, and that was a couple of years ago. And of course, we're getting better all the time at fine-tuning those muscles and then all the little movements to make it more smooth and feel more natural and things like that. Really, the only thing that threw me off was the eyes of this robot, because there's something different. Even a really well-painted glass eye or whatever still is not quite the same as an actual human eye. There's something to it. So I don't know that we'll ever be able to cross that, but as far as just movements that don't look like a robot who's been programmed to move my mouth when I say these things, or whatever, I think we're probably a lot closer than people realize.
Maybe, I don't know, because I've seen some of those videos too, and when you really pay attention to the shape of the mouth and there's a lot of little things that toss you into the uncanny valley.
There are some things, and that's why I said we're close. We're not there yet, but again, we are getting better every year with, pretty much in every field, we're getting better.
I'm just saying, I want to know how long it is before we have Deus Ex robots hiding among us.
So Cylons seducing people and killing them. Yeah, I don't know, 6 months.
How to answer that one, but they're definitely getting better. And I think the Cars ride and Ariel's Grotto. I'm sorry, I keep going back to Disneyland.
No, do it.
But they got a lot of great examples of robots that kind of like Cars ride. I was very impressed by how much articulation there was in the mouth parts. And Ariel's Grotto, Ariel looks pretty realistic when you consider that she's just an animatronic puppet.
Yeah.
Right? And, I think they're getting better and better, and Japanese are way obsessed with robots, and so they're always making stuff like that.
Well, and I saw recently on, I want to say Facebook, a little video clip of some of the new Disneyland exhibits or stuff, with Belle and things like that, and they showed different clips of her. One of the clips was of her singing her opening song from Beauty and the Beast or whatever, and so she's leaning over a railing or something like that. Then there was another clip of her and the Beast dancing in the ballroom in her big yellow dress or whatever. And you can tell that they're not real, obviously, because they're trying to model it after the Disney cartoon, so she's got the enormous eyes, and the proportions are a little out of whack, but even though the proportions were out of whack, the movements of the robots were incredibly smooth.
So what I'm hearing from everyone is that we really just need to get a Patreon made and fund a research visit out to Disneyland.
Yeah, sure.
Go to Galaxy's End, go and study all their robots.
But it was really impressive, though. It was probably the most realistic body movement because it was very fluid. There was almost no, like, oh, you can tell they reached the end of that set of programming and now we're moving into the next one. There was almost none of that at all, where it would just continually flow around. I'm like, wow, that's very good. All you need to do is port that body movement over into the face and you'll just about have it.
And I think there are some great examples of like where they got like the soft skin and they're very articulated. So I can't really remember something about this. I'm sure I've seen it somewhere, but they have like all these different actuators for the face muscles and the soft skin to cover it all up.
I remember seeing something like that too, and I think that was part of the same thing that I saw like 2 or 3 years ago, I believe out of Japan, where they had really done their homework on the facial muscles and like how you pull things differently to make it seem more real, and they had covered it in some kind of, it looked like skin. Obviously I was watching it on TV so I couldn't really feel it or anything, but it looked, pretty good. It had been painted well to look realistic.
That's another thing that Star Wars doesn't really get into that a lot of other sci-fi shows do, is the like full-on human imitating androids. Like you get droids walking around with human shape, you get the Magna Guard and stuff, but they don't usually, like there's some EU ones that touch up on it, but for the most part we don't see they never tried to hide, they never tried the usual sci-fi gimmick of, oh yeah, it's totally a robot, except for Luke's hand, but it just happens to look exactly like a human.
That's weird too, because with Luke's hand it looks like a real hand, so why haven't they built a human robot fully?
You're talking about the scene in Empire Strikes Back, right?
When they poke his hand,
I'll almost guarantee that was his real hand.
No, we know that. That's obviously.
But that's what I'm saying.
But
in universe, you've got
a
realistic hand that looks and feels exactly like a human hand. Why haven't you built?
Also, why did Luke downgrade his hand later?
Exactly. I had that same problem with the new movies. Is, well, why do they go back if he's got this superior biological-looking hand? Why does he go back to the mechanical hand?
And the reason, of course, is we didn't have the capability of making that when we did the original trilogy. So just pretend that was a robot hand the whole time.
Or maybe a way to kind of say that out is like he didn't have the ability to go back and get that same care.
He went into exile and has been doing work on his hand himself ever since or something. But
he also had the robot hand in his flashback.
That's true. You're right. When he was at the temple.
I mean, the skin must have fallen off at some point. He just never cared to put it back on, which I'm sure could not have been a fun day.
Yeah, but his hand's too large for that.
Well, then there's that whole part in Empire Strikes Back where like the metal droid's poking and he's feeling it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I can feel that." And so it seems like a downgrade.
He would lose that sensation, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
that's right.
So why would you go back? That's one of the things.
Well, I mean, ostensibly he lost that sensation. Maybe he does still have it. He just doesn't have the appearance. I don't know. It looks cool. I love his hand. I love the look of his hand in the end of Force Awakens and Last Jedi. But yeah, it doesn't make sense.
So AI in Star Wars is owning android slavery. The ethics of AI, and
if you ask L3, yes.
Yeah.
So the word robot is a Czech word, right? So it was invented from a Czech word, and the name that translates to is forced labor. So by definition, robots are slaves, and we shouldn't have any qualms.
Well, that's great.
I don't know about the Czech specifically, but in Russian, it's robot is the verb to work. Yeah. Like they're designed to work. There's nothing forced about it in Russian, at least. I can't speak for the Czech, but yeah, that is the verb there, to work. So.
Well, I expected this to be a much longer discussion, but I mean that we just had an answer.
So I guess the question could be: is should you feel bad about it?
Well, I look at it like this, though. Is your car a slave? I think most people would probably say no.
No.
Right? Is your computer a slave? I mean, with as many games as I play, you might feel like that, but, but probably not. My computer is smarter than my car. What about my cell phone? It's at least as smart as my computer. It's really a matter of at what point does the intelligence...
this is one of the great ongoing questions of sci-fi. Is at what point is
I don't think we're going to answer it here, but I just thought we'd give Ryan a chance to.
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to our earlier conversation about sentient thought and asking those hard questions. If the AI has progressed to that point, then maybe you can start feeling bad about it. But until then, it's just fulfilling its purpose. I mean, we can go back to kind of more advanced robots like your autonomous driving vehicles, your Teslas and your Google cars or whatever, or your Roombas that you got running around your house. Do you feel bad about putting them to work and making them vacuum your floor for you when you should be doing it? It's just a robot fulfilling its purpose.
I don't see why. I don't feel bad about making my children do those chores.
I think that's why we have kids.
But here is the thing, though, is that I wonder if a lot of that is based on its ability to kind of respond and interact with you. Because I've noticed that, so these Alexas here, so they've been...
I half expected her to wake up.
I know, I did too. So I found it interesting how they respond, and you can talk to them a little bit more casually than you can say something like Siri. And so I do find myself saying thank you after Alexa's done that.
You're so nice.
But the funny part is, though, is that it'll actually still listen a little bit after it's given its response, so that if you do say something else, it can keep going. And so it'll thank you for thanking it, And it's just like, let's...
So out of the four of us, we know who's going to survive the robot apocalypse. Yeah. It's going to be Ross.
Yes, exactly.
There's another example of AI that's already in your house, right? So you got your assistants, right? And they're also like on your phone. The Google Maps uses AI to figure out the shortest distance from A to B. That's an AI algorithm that it's using. Yep. And then it would I
hadn't thought about that.
The great thing about the Google one is it'll take into account things like traffic times and
which I love,
and it'll reroute you if you. So
it's also much better than
that's all done by AI. So
it's also much better than the Apple one. Yeah, my general rule of thumb when looking at sci-fi situations where you've got burgeoning AI is basically, is it intelligent enough to ask for its freedom? And if it is, then probably just play it safe and let it go free.
Just then make another version that's a little bit back.
Yeah, get a new one, make a new one, whatever. But like if something's intelligent enough to start going to not just ask like, is freedom a thing that I could have or whatever, but if it's actively reached a point where it's saying, no, I have a desire and that desire is to be free. Well, okay. Yeah, I can get how a lot of people would try and step on that, but that's playing Fallout 4 with the synths. That was always where I was just like, look, people, let them go. If they want to leave, and you got all these people in the Institute that are like, no, they're not finished yet. They could go crazy and, kill people. And I'm like, and that makes some difference from most of the Commonwealth. How?
Yeah.
Like, big whoop. Let them go.
They'll fit right in. Yeah.
But yeah, if it's smart enough to ask for it, you're on rocky ground denying it, at least. It's at the very least, it's rocky.
Yeah.
And that's one reason I like the movie Deus Ex with that's Oscar Isaacs and Domhnall Gleeson from
Ex Machina,
Oh, Ex Machina, thank you. Ex Machina. It does a very good job for me of portraying, this guy who's created this robot and portraying how for him, it's like, no, this is a thing I have made and I'm trying to get it to a human point. But it's very much this, like, I can see why he would be looking at this as, no, this is something I built. This is not a person whose needs I need to consider because I am programming her, I can alter her, and she's not done yet. The project isn't done. Yeah. And it did a good job of setting that up in a way where I could go, I see where you're coming from. Still going, she's asking for freedom, just give it to her, but I can see where you're coming from. I see how hard it would be as the creator of something like that to be able to step back and go, okay, I guess you are finished, basically. It's like the problem of parents with well, I guess you're an adult now. I guess I can just let you handle everything. It's like, I'm going to hands off.
And you step back and watch them fail and then laugh.
Yeah, well, that's fun sometimes, but...
So now the other part of this question, though, is that so in Star Wars they like to kind of poke fun at a joke, the droid lives matter, the hashtag they have going on with L3 now. Are we going to get to that point in real life?
Well, I think if we get to the point the AI is asking those difficult questions, what's the purpose of life? Is this real life kind of questions? I don't know. And if it can pass the Turing test, then I think that, maybe we'll get there. But for the most part, I just see them as having a set of functions and a purpose, and I don't see them really growing outside of that purpose.
Well, and I'd say that's kind of what we got in Star Wars, where it's L3 has enough corruptions or weirdness in her.
And they make the point that he's never wiped her memory because he likes her personality.
Yeah, that apparently makes her really into Lando.
Well, I mean, you don't need any corruptions in your personality to be into Lando. But no, it's it feels like most of the droids in Star Wars aren't actively, and they're not where L3 is of seeking independence or anything. Even the one she sets free in the mind it just kind of get the feeling that it's her going, seek freedom, and so they go, okay, I've been told to do this. I guess I'll unlock everything.
Or the ones that are fighting in the ultimate droid battle place, right?
Yeah, the ring they had. Yeah,
those guys are like, she's talking to them, and they're like, "What are you talking about? I mean, it doesn't compute, right?"
Yeah, they don't respond when she tries to tell them.
Yeah, so I think she's got this unique kind of malfunction that makes her that way, but
made her that way.
Yeah, made her that way. So I mean, I think she's by far the most annoying droid in the Star Wars universe.
Yes, high five.
But it also I thought it was kind of a neat tie-in too. If you think about when C-3PO says to Han, "I don't know where your ship learned to communicate, but it's got the weirdest form of dialogue." Oh, that's because it's L3. And I thought that was kind of a neat tie-in. So.
I have a my headcanon is that Lando eventually came back to that ship and was like, look, I'm just downloading her real quick, and then left. And the idea of L3 spending eternity locked inside the brain of the Millennium Falcon just
Listening
that does
to
not
Hawk
is
complain.
hilarious.
that is not an existence I would wish upon anyone.
That is hilarious to me, but then again, I have a black heart, so, you know.
I do too, but
I'm theorizing, could Lobot be where L3 got put? But she now got her autonomy satisfied, so now she's not a loudmouth like she was.
nah.
No, Lobot, we learn in Rebels, remember, from Zebo or whatever, the Rhodian, with the same thing, that the Empire literally would take people and put that little collar around the side of their head and plug it into their brain to make them, like, more efficient at, like, doing numbers and, like, accounting for the Empire, basically.
So Lobot's not...
Lobot is an actual person.
He's a cyborg.
There's the Lando comic where Lobot is actually speaking and stuff, and he's hacking into the Imperial system because he's connected. And then, like, something happens, I can't remember exactly, and it basically fries his brain so he can't talk anymore and kind of makes him... Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah, and he was Lando's best friend after Elite.
Man, Lando does not have
dangerous occupation being Lando's best friend.
It's a good thing he and Han were more frenemies.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of like the reverse cyborg, right? Where now the computer's now controlling the biology.
Yeah. How cyborgy are we in the real world?
So there are implants that you can get. I actually had talked with a colleague about this one time where he had done some work with that, and he actually said that without any kind of feedback, mechanical or electrical feedback, they could just hook up a actuated gripper to like an amputee or something, and they could say, okay, squeeze this and tell me if it's hard or soft or about how big it is without being able to see it. And they could actually tell, and there wasn't any kind of sensors in there. It was just kind of, so it's just kind of muscle memory that they use to kind of learn that stuff. So
that's so cool. Let's do our top 5 droids.
Who wants to start us out with their number 5?
I'll go ahead.
Sweet.
BB-8 is my number 5.
Good choice.
He's just cute. He's helpful. He's a different shaped droid, which is pretty cool. You know,
I'm not going to lie also that I love that they actually built him.
Yes.
He actually rolls around.
Yes. So cool. So there you go.
My number 5 is the Gonk droid.
Oh,
the Gonk. Oh yeah, the Gonk. Yeah.
Gonk. Gonk.
So part of it is, I mean, he's just kind of goofy and funny, and he just kind of wanders around. But they were useful in old canon because they were power droids.
They are still.
Are they still?
Yep.
Oh, good.
They're essentially a giant walking battery.
Basically. Walk around if you need power somewhere, walk it over, and plug them in.
But like they're really powerful batteries. Like they can run, like a couple of them can like run the Rebel base.
Yeah.
So like they're very powerful batteries.
That's cool. My number 5 is the Droideka, the destroyer droid.
Ah, nice.
I always loved them. You know, rolling around. They got their own shields.
And especially like the first time we saw those in theaters, I remember I was like, "What the heck is that noise?" You know, and then they like unfurl, and I'm like, "What in the world is going on?"
And nowadays you hear that noise, and you immediately know it's like, "Oh, Droidekas!"
Yeah.
It's like playing Left 4 Dead, where it's like, "Oh crap, a smoker!"
Exactly.
I think they're actually the only really scary droid in Star Wars.
I mean, you know, there are individual scary ones. I'd say like IG-88.
Okay.
Yeah,
but
those
as
are
a
way
class
scary
of
just
droid.
because of the shields and stuff. It makes them almost impossible to deal with.
They're the only droids we've ever really seen that just sent Jedi running.
Yeah.
Consistently, frequently, unless you're Yoda.
For my number 5, I have the Commando droid. So these are from the
from Clone Wars.
Clone Wars,
yeah.
Right? And I guess it's a little bit easier because you can animate it. But I really like them because they're articulate. I think if it's going to be a robot, it's going to be better than human, right? So it's going to have more mobility. It's going to be
and they are lethal, man. They're jumping around, climbing on walls and ceilings and crap.
They're what you're afraid a droid would be.
Yeah.
So. All right, number 4. I just went with the B2 battle droid, the big silver droids from episode 2 and 3.
Yeah,
and
with
all the Clone Wars. With the wrist rockets and everything.
Yeah.
They look cool, I think. And then, you know, they're a step above, of course, the regular B1 battle droids. They're pretty cool.
I went with K2SO. Or that line.
Oh, no, I totally forgot about K2SO. Crap. Hold on.
Actually, no, I will have to say K2 specifically because the non-reprogrammed ones are just kind of boring.
Yeah.
I'm changing my answer. I want K2 there. I completely forgot about that. The B2 can suck it.
Hey, wait a minute. You don't let us change our answers.
K2 line. The K line of droids.
I feel like he could be. So C-3PO has some awesome abilities. Universal translator, can do
Spy
numbers
master.
really, really fast. Spy master.
Oh, by the time the new trilogy happens, he literally has a galaxy-wide network of droids that spy for him.
Really?
Yeah. The droid in Maz's castle that says, hey, BB-8's here, it reports to 3PO.
Oh.
And 3PO is the one who says, by the way, and he refuses to call them spies. He just says they're his friends. This is just his network of friends. Not because he's like, I'm not a spy master. He's like, that's way too much.
That's way beyond my programming.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, these are just my friends. This is just my network of friends.
Also, he's got a cool red arm.
Do you gotta read books to find that kind of information out, or is it
comics? The comics have it.
That's part of my problem with the new movies is they're not self-contained. There's like all this information.
I mean, you get what's going on anyway. Like, there's a droid and there's a person who both report the same information to both teams. Like, you don't really need to know any more than that. It's just a cool tidbit.
This is where his historian training really shines, is because he treats Star Wars like he does history.
Yeah.
Reads everything, remembers everything.
So one of the biggest problems, and this may be a side you might want to cut this out later, but one of the biggest problems I have with the new trilogy is I didn't really like Force Awakens all that much. It was great until it got to the end, and then they go to the Starkiller base, which is a dumb name, and at that point it's just like A New Hope or Return of the Jedi, where they go to destroy the big bad battle station, right? And it just felt very derivative to me, and I was like, I kind of liked how the prequels, for as bad as they are, at least they felt like original stories. It was same universe but different thing. And these new movies just feel like they're just rehashing the same story over and over again. Like with the original trilogy, you could just drop it into the middle of the story and say, this is who the bad guys are, this is who the good guys are. But now that we have this history, you can't just do that with the other movies. And so I'm really bugged by the fact that instead of the rebels, they're the resistance, and instead of the Empire, it's the First Order. And there's no really explanation about, well, how did you get there from here? Why are we stuck in the same holding pattern for 30 years? Why aren't we in a different type of environment? And instead we're just in the exact same place we were 30 years ago. And that's kind of my biggest problem with the whole universe.
I think that's fair.
And then Rian Johnson comes in and he destroys all the mystery, and it's like all this stuff that was built up, and I was like, well, maybe in the next movie they'll explain some of these things they're setting up, and instead he just destroys it all. It was like, for me, he was trying to outmaneuver the how it should have ended guys, and said, well, why couldn't Kylo Ren just kill the big bad and become the big bad himself? And so he does that, and it's like, well, now all the mystery is gone and I don't care.
T3M4 from Knights of the Old Republic. He's your little astromech droid.
That's right.
Yeah, T3 is your astromech droid in Knights of the Old Republic. And really it is, he doesn't have much personality. He speaks in beeps. You don't actually get a translation of them, even though you can have dialogue with him. He's like your dog in Dragon Age, basically.
Just there for fun.
But it's that you get to spend time with him, and he's yours, and that endeared him to me. He was like my own little R2. And so
there you go.
it was.
I love it. All right, number 3. I went with.
I don't have K2 because I can never forgive them for making him inexplicably amazing at combat, even though his design should not have him be that way in any way.
Well, I actually kind of like that about him. That's one of the reasons why I put him on my list, because I like how he catches the blaster and he's like doing the computer programming and shooting things, and it's like, if you're going to have a droid, it's going to be able to do all these things.
Theoretically, except that they've never done that with any other droids, and so
that's why K2's awesome.
Well, that's the thing, is K2 actually makes the most sense, because he's just showing us things that droids should do anyway. Right?
Yeah, except that they never have, so apparently they don't in this universe.
And that's, I would say, because at the time that the first movies were made, they didn't have the technology to do that. And so reality surpassed expectations a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
So my number 3 was the Droideka. Really cool, interesting, unique design. It's got the cool shields, the blasters. Like you said, it makes Jedi run. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty cool droid.
I also put the Destroyer droid for my number 3.
Dang, Ross, we are on it.
My number 3 is HK-47 from Knights of the Old Republic. For similar, I put him above T3 because not only is he, your droid that you get to pal around with, but also he's a homicidal maniac. And
yes, he is.
Hey, that endears him right up to me.
Refers to everything living as meatbag.
Meatbag, yep, including you.
So I put IG-88. You don't really get a lot of his personality, but he's just this imposing droid. Yeah.
He has presence.
Yeah, he's got presence, and that alone put him all the way up to number 3. And in my head, he's kind of like HK-47, right? He's like this very merciless type robot that's...
It'll be interesting to see. I don't know. I figure he'll probably have several appearances in The Mandalorian. I mean, they showed a picture of him, so that'll be interesting to see what sort of personality he has.
Okay, Kyler, what have you destroyed the lock-in of your original list?
Yeah, no, totally. I'm changing things up as you guys say stuff. Because you're reminding me how much I love some of these other droids. So number 2, I put commando droids from the Clone Wars. They're way cool. They were actually, when we sat down to do this list, it was the first droid that popped into my head. I'm like, okay, what's a cool droid? And I thought, man, the commando droids were just so cool. They're so agile and deadly and just awesome, and they can take a few hits and keep going. They're just way cool.
My number 2 was BB-8.
Chris, you too?
BB-8.
Nice.
Yeah, I love BB-8.
I have for my number 2 the Droidicas, so we've already talked about them.
Nice
choice.
Yep.
Very good.
We all agree they're awesome.
Yep. All right, my number 1. I'm cheating a little bit because I'm naming 2, but that's because they come in a pair.
I almost did that with HK-47 and TK, but
oh, nice.
Or T3.
BT-1 and 000, the evil 3PO and evil R2 from the Dr. Aphra comics. They are so fantastic. And just totally murderous, and yet really polite about it. Like the evil 3PO BT is super polite about it, and he's very politely angry at people when they die too quickly, because that's rude, don't you know, to die before you're done being tortured. All kinds of really funny little quirky things that if 3PO somehow became chaotic evil, that would be these guys. They're pretty funny. Love them.
Give us yours though, Ross.
My number 1 is R2-D2.
Yeah,
I mean,
Natch.
come on.
I also have R2-D2, although I was tempted to go with BB-9E.
I'm mistaken. 000 was the 3PO, and BT is the evil R2.
How dare you?
I know, right?
I've lost all faith in you.
So I also went with R2-D2 for number 1. So.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
That's, I'm surprised at how many we all had at the same... Yeah, actually, I just...
Yeah, that's exactly
I suspected we'd get a lot of R2, but incidentally, listeners,
R2
Kyler had R2 as his number 1 until he remembered these.
Until I remembered there's an evil version of R2 out there, and so I had to pick that. He's got everything. He's got flamethrowers, poison gas, rocket launcher, miniguns.
And
can he actually speak?
A black...
Yes.
A black C-3PO with red eyes is not what I needed to see before bed.
Oh, just wait till he gets out like his Freddy Krueger claws and starts literally cutting people up. It's pretty awesome. It's really great.
Alrighty then.
Yep.
And he's got like a poison index finger, like a little needle that pops out and like poisons you. It's pretty great. I think that's it, right, Ryan? Unless you wanted to throw some more droid knowledge on us.
I had some honorable mentions.
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah.
So my honorable mentions were the Grievous guards. I don't know exactly.
Oh,
what
the
Magna
Magna
Guard.
Guards.
Yeah, I did.
The IG-100s.
Yeah. Again, more articulation than you've seen before. So I think that a droid
And they can keep fighting without their head.
The other one I had was HK-47, which was already talked about.
Nice.
And then the Vulture droid. I just thought
I do like the Vulture droids.
it fits its purpose. It's
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good.
My only other honorable mention was BB-9E.
Yeah, he was on there as well. Or I was going to put him on there, and I was like, well, I can't just go all evil. I'll go BB-8.
Well, you don't. You don't.
He doesn't have anything. I just like him because he's got them, but and because he's really striking black little BB-8.
He looks good.
Yeah,
as all Imperial units do.
He's BB-8 in formal wear. So
Guys,
which, as we all know, turns you evil. So
that's great. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, listeners, thank you for being here with us and hopefully enjoying this episode as much as we did.
Ryan, thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, Ryan, especially. Thank you, man. Thank you for making the trip down here and being with us. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at More Civilized. Let us know what you thought. If you have anything to say, I get lonely on there, so talk to me.
You can also speak with me on Twitter at Mr_R*. And this week we'd like to make a special mention of, or at least I'd like to make a special mention of the poll that Steven put up.
Yeah,
I thought it was just a fun little community gathering question. Just what was your favorite?
A few weeks ago by now.
Yeah, a few weeks by now, but so.
Yeah.
It was just what was your favorite Star Wars movie, and we've gotten some good responses for how many.
I've got to go back and check it. When I did it, there were only a couple of responses.
Yeah, there've been a handful I've actually seen in the last few hours.
Yeah.
But no, so thank you, Stephen, for helping engage the community and bringing us all together. So So.
And Stephen, if we haven't done so already, we absolutely need to do the 1,200 point sector war battle for Armada. Just throwing that out there.
I'm gonna plug my plug the anthology I was in recently. As we've been talking about partially mechanical cyborg people, so go pick up Black Hand in Put Your Shoulder to the Wheel, an anthology of Mormon steampunk, which features a steampunk cyborg dude. So technically, and yeah. Let me know what you think about it. Leave us some reviews on Amazon, because that is really what the more reviews it gets, the better it does on Amazon, the more people get to see it. So I'd love to see some of that.
You heard it here. Go give Chris your pennies, people.
Please do. And if there's any topics you'd like to hear us cover, please let us know, and maybe you'll get invited on here like Ryan did.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can. It's Niref2112, so it's NIRREF 2112. It's my last name spelled backwards, so now the cat's out of the bag, so you can find me in real life.
They're getting your identity stolen.
Yeah, so
I guess that solves our mystery earlier of, is Ryan Ferrin this Ryan that's coming on the show?
Yeah.
Apparently the answer is yes.
Yeah, so I just joined the Facebook group today.
Very good.
Mostly because when my wife and kids found out that I was coming to meet a bunch of strangers at the Walmart parking lot,
they had to vet us, huh?
They got a little concerned, so I went there to find you guys and Facebook stalk you a little bit so I could show them. See, these guys.
Show her that at least two of these three guys, two or three.
Unless they're all catfishing, then they look like they're pretty normal people. So.
Have you texted and let them know you're okay?
Yes.
Right?
Okay. But mostly I just tweet about Bake and Sell, this podcast, and politics. So you probably stop following me pretty shortly after that. But.
I've enjoyed all three of it. All three of those things. Well, there we go.
May the force be with you.
Always.
I'm Anna Graves, and thank you for listening to a more civilized podcast.